All right, let's jump right in. We usually think of doubt as faith's biggest enemy, right? But what if it's actually necessary? Today, we're going to explore a really surprising idea from the Quran, that a little bit of uncertainty isn't a problem to be solved, but a feature that's there for a powerful reason: mercy.
I mean, it's the big question, isn't it? You've probably thought about it. I know I have. If God is all-powerful and belief is so important, why all the ambiguity? Why not just appear and settle the debate once and for all? Well, the Quran actually takes this question head-on.
And this is where things get really interesting. The common view says doubt is a wall you have to climb over to get to faith. But the perspective we're looking at today completely flips that idea on its head. It argues that doubt is what makes the whole system of mercy possible in the first place. So, how on earth does that work?
Well, it all boils down to one simple, powerful idea: choice. For belief to have any real moral value, it has to be a free decision. It can't be something you're forced into because the evidence is just too overwhelming. It has to be a genuine choice.
And get this, the Quran itself actually describes a moment when that choice disappears. It talks about a day when the proof will be so absolute, so undeniable, that there's no room for doubt left. And at that exact moment, it says, faith loses its value. The opportunity for a meaningful belief is just gone.
So this really gets to the heart of it. A belief that actually matters isn't about being correct when you have no other option. It's about the commitment you make when you could have actually gone the other way. It's about a sincerity that can only show up when you aren't being forced.
Now, this isn't just some abstract philosophical point. The Quran illustrates this idea with actual stories. We see this pattern again and again. People demand absolute, undeniable proof, and the response they get is patience, divine restraint.
So let's look at our first example, the story of the Israelites. Now, according to the text, they'd already seen some pretty incredible things. We're talking parting the sea, being saved from a dictator, you name it. But for them, it still wasn't enough. They wanted the final, undeniable proof.
And their demand is just so blunt. Listen to this. We will never believe you until we see Allah outright. You can feel the challenge in those words. This wasn't a humble search for truth. It was an ultimatum. They were setting the terms.
And what happens next is pretty dramatic. They're struck down by a thunderbolt, a direct consequence. But then, and this is the crucial part, they're brought back to life. This isn't a reward. The text presents it as an act of mercy, a pulling back from the brink to give them more time, more space to reflect and choose freely.
And believe it or not, we see this exact same dynamic play out again, this time with the critics of the Prophet Muhammad. They also demanded a sign, but their challenge was even more intense. They basically said, hey God, if you're real, prove it by destroying us.
I mean, just pause and think about that for a second. They weren't asking for a beautiful miracle. They were asking for their own destruction as the ultimate proof. If this is true, bring on the rain of stones. That is a profound and, frankly, a pretty dark challenge.
And yet, the stones didn't fall. And the Quran gives two specific reasons why not. First, because the prophet was still there with them as a living guide. And second, and this is the big one, because the door for forgiveness was still open. As long as people could still change their minds and ask for forgiveness, that final, irreversible judgment was held back.
Okay, so if God isn't in the business of dropping these overwhelming, coercive signs from the sky, then what kind of evidence is on offer? This is where we get into the Quran's whole approach to signs, and the idea that they're meant to invite you, not force you.
Right at the very beginning, the book says it's a guide for those who believe in the unseen. Now, in this context, unseen doesn't mean believing in something with zero evidence. It means having an openness to meaning, even when you aren't being overpowered by proof. It's an ethical choice to engage with the world in a certain way.
And the examples of signs it gives are often intentionally small. Not parting seas, but a mosquito. The text says God isn't timid to use a mosquito as an example, but you gotta ask, why a mosquito?
Seriously, what kind of sign is that? A mosquito isn't gonna make anyone fall to their knees in awe. It's not a shocking, undeniable miracle. So what's its point?
And the answer is, it's the kind of sign that rewards a certain kind of person. It rewards curiosity, it rewards paying attention, it rewards someone who is willing to look at something small and reflect on its incredible complexity. The power of the sign isn't in the sign itself, but in what it unlocks for a mind that is open and looking for meaning.
So, let's bring this all home. If the whole point is to protect free choice,
and the signs in the world are subtle invitations, not commands, then we can finally understand why doubt isn't a problem. It's a mercy.
Just think about the alternative for a second. A world with zero doubt, absolute, undeniable proof. In that world, belief isn't a choice, it's just compliance. And disbelief? Well, it becomes pure, deliberate defiance. There'd be no room for honest mistakes. No, I just wasn't sure.
And this brings us right back to why that punishment was delayed. Judgment is held back as long as the path to forgiveness is open. A world of absolute certainty would slam that door shut. For mercy to even be an option, you need ambiguity.
So here it is, the big idea. Doubt isn't some flaw in the system that gets in the way of justice. It is the system. It's the carefully preserved space that allows mercy to exist. It's the very air that our moral freedom needs to breathe.
Which leaves us with one last thing to think about. Maybe, just maybe, the greatest act of mercy isn't being handed a clear, undeniable answer that ends all discussion. Maybe the greatest mercy of all is being given the freedom to sincerely ask the question in the first place.